The Celtics are heading to the conference finals. Who they're facing, New York Knicks or Indiana Pacers? We're about to talk about it. What's good? If you're new here, my name's Adam Taylor. I cover the Boston Celtics for USA Today and SB Nation. I also do the Celtics Chronicle newsletter, which is obviously part of this podcast, accompanied with this podcast. I'm joined by my homie, Mr. Brenden Nunez, covers the Sacramento Kings from Sacktown Sports. Is that right, Brenden?
Correct. At the radio station right now. Yeah, appreciate you, man, sneaking this one in. And, you know, a good game from Boston yesterday. A fairly easy one to talk about, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, no Donovan Mitchell, no Jarrett Allen, no Karis LeVert, no Jarrett Allen for the entire series. I'm a big believer in you can only beat what's in front of you. Like, you can talk about the guys that weren't on the floor all day, but then you have to factor in no Kristaps Porzingis too, just to make it fair. Cleveland played hard. They played their asses off. They played a different brand, a more fluid brand of basketball without Donovan Mitchell. It is what it is. They're in the rear view. Now Boston get a bit of an additional rest. I'm genuinely feeling like this Knicks series is going to go 7 games. I feel like Indiana's going to pull it out, push it to 7, and then it's whoever, right? Like, whoever wins that, it's a coin flip. How are you feeling about this? Like, coming out of this series, what you've seen against Miami, what you've seen against Cleveland, who do you want? Do you want to go with the fast-paced Pacers, or do you want to go with like that grit and grind, boa constrictor New York Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Knicks are probably more similar to the Cavs when it comes to some of the physicality, even if, I guess, between Cleveland and Orlando was the more physical team, but New York definitely tops both of those. And offensively, it's really Indiana's calling card. Like, they set the NBA record for offensive rating this year. They run you out the gym. I kind of think that, I think Indiana would definitely be easier. I don't think that they're actually a conference finals like caliber team. And that's no hate. It just kind of feels like the year that the Trailblazers went to the conference finals in the West, you know, where they just,
or the Hawks went to the
right. You know, not trying to discredit their run, because like you said, you can only play who's in front of you. And I agree with that. But I think that the Celtics should be able to take care of Indy pretty easily. I think their defense could cause them some troubles, and defensively, Indiana is just, they've been better in this series for sure, but I still don't think they can slow down Boston really like that. And, you know, New York side, that one is more about taking care of the details. I mean, I think it's fairly similar again to this Cleveland one. Like, don't allow offensive rebounds. You got to be really careful with turnovers. And again, it's a team that does not shoot that many threes. Like, I kind of think that in New York's case, the Celtics should just be able to outpace them, really. And the way that they've dominated these first 2 series, I kind of don't think they're going to have much trouble in this Eastern Conference Finals. Like, maybe I'm crazy, but it feels like this shouldn't be that hard of a task in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely about staying locked in, not playing down to competition. That's an issue the Celtics have had in previous years. Hasn't really been a big thing this year. You don't win, 68 games by playing down to competition. You don't go 8-2 in the postseason by playing down to competition. But it's a factor, especially if you're up against a New York team that's missing Julius Randle. They could be missing Anunoby. They're going to be missing Bogdanovic. Again, the question marks come into, well, you're facing a team that's not fully healthy. Is Porzingis going to be back? There's a world where they can kind of walk into this feeling a little overconfident, and Jalen Brunson's too good for you to have that overconfidence with. You know what I'm saying? With Indiana, it's a bit different. Tyrese Halliburton's a handful. They play at a really high pace, as you said. But the problem is the Celtics like to dictate tempo. They try and control the glass. They run their speed. They play very fast-paced decision-making basketball, but very slow, like a controlled tempo, getting up and down the floor, getting into their actions. That won't suit Indiana very well. If Indiana can't control the pace, I don't see where they have an advantage anywhere on the floor. Whereas New York, I feel like they have a bit of an advantage in the half court if you're on offense, because you're going to have to send 2 at Brunson, and that's not really what the Celtics do. They'll switch at you, they'll hedge you, but they do like to kind of like show and recover, and then or switch and then switch back out to keep their best point of attack defenders on guys like Brunson. So New York worries me a little bit more, plus their fan base is just insane.
Yeah, that is fair. I mean, I will say, you know, Celtics and Knicks would be a solid Eastern Conference Finals when it comes to just fan bases, the legacy of it and everything. I think when it comes to New York and Brunson specifically, because he's just been going ridiculous. Like this dude's averaging 30 plus. It feels like sometimes this guy's averaging 40. But Andrew Nembhard like can't guard this guy to save his life. And I really like Andrew Nembhard. He can't do it. When they've put Neesmith on him, it's been better. But, Celtics fan knows that Neesmith has gotten better, obviously, since his time. But the Celtics have so many better defenders than those options. And even when you looked at Philly, like Philly didn't really have guys to put on Brunson, and New York has so much reliance on him. And there's been games, I think specifically in that Philly series, where it's like, okay, we're going to double Brunson. And then Josh Hart gets downhill and makes some plays, or Dante DiVincenzo, right? And to me, in a New York series, it feels like it would be those other guys. I feel like those Celtics can do enough to shut down Brunson. Are you going to get a game where Dante DiVincenzo knocks down 6 threes, where Josh Hart gets 4 offensive rebounds? It feels like they have enough options, and definitely more than the first 2 teams that New York has come up against.
I feel like as well, and I say this whenever you play a team that are heavily reliant on one guy. So you'll hear me say this again about Jokic, even when the Celtics face them in the NBA Finals. You let Brunson go off. You shut everybody else down around him. You take away their ability to be an impactful member of the rotation. And you just let Brunson do what Brunson wants to do, because he's not beating you on his own. He's not going to score enough or generate enough offense to blow this Celtics team out the water on his own. It's kind of what the Celtics did in, I think it was game 3 against Cleveland, where Mitchell kind of just went off and they shut everybody else down. Because you can let Mitchell go and get 40 if everybody else is only giving you 20 accumulatively. You're screwed. You're not going to get there. And obviously, that's a bit of an over exaggeration saying that everyone else only gives you 20, but it's the idea behind it, right? You let him go off and stop everybody else. Whereas if it's Indiana, you don't really need to worry. Like Halliburton's had a few good games, he's had a few off games. I think my biggest confidence boost coming into this series is neither team have been here before, not as they're currently constructed, right? Neither roster have been to a conference finals, with the additional pressure that comes with that, the media attention, Final Four, and coming up against a team like Boston that, forget what the media are telling you, they haven't been tested this year. They've been tested year after year. This is their six conference finals in the last 8 years.
God, yeah, wild.
This team's ready, man. And I don't care if it's New York, I don't care if it's Indiana. They're coming into this for the first time. There's a lot of off-court stuff that can affect you that Boston just know how to deal with, and New York and Indiana won't.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think that these guys got it. Last time we talked, and you've done a couple episodes since, like we were wondering about Jason Tatum. There were a bunch of questions. He balled out at the end of that series. There were questions about Al Horford and some of him getting targeted and switching.
I'm alive, dude.
Yeah, which is understandable, but he had a very good game 5. I think there's an aspect of like, what should be expected from him at this current point? And obviously when Porzingis is out there, that really changes the whole formula. But these guys have been here. And I will say on Indiana and New York side, like the coaches have been there a little bit, but it's definitely not the same, to your point. Like this group itself has not been there, even like Pascal thrown in there. It's just not the same with this group where he'd be the primary, really. So, yeah, I mean, I think that definitely factors in here. Do you see either of these? I mean, they would be a challenge, obviously. I'm trying to think of the right way to word this.
No one's a cakewalk in the conference finals.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, but there's part of me that's like, this could also be another 5-game series. New York worries me a little bit more. I think they fight, but the playing guys 40-plus minutes, they're starting to accumulate some injuries. Is that going to start catching up to them even more so than it already has? I think it definitely plays a factor.
Yeah, part of me feels like we should worry more about Siakam, just in terms of his overall talent, being able to score across multiple levels. But he's never really shown that against the Celtics, right? Tatum usually finds a way of getting the best of that matchup. Brown will find a way of getting the best of that matchup. New York would worry me a bit more if I knew Anunoby was going to be at 100%, if I knew Randall was going to be in the rotation. Bogdanovic didn't really do much since being traded there, so there's not really a reason to be concerned there. But overall, like, New York scare me a bit more. I feel like when you look at what both teams can do, I'd be shocked if it went deeper than 6. If I'm being honest, I feel like 6 is fair. I'm giving you 2 wins there, and I'm expecting one of them to be game 2. Just because that seems to be a trend. So Boston win game 1, lose game 2, bounce back, and maybe a team steals the second one. But I don't see this going further than 6, and 5 feels reasonable. And I'm not being disingenuous or rude to the other team. It's just the Celtics are that much better than either of those, and that much more experienced.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Again, like you said, not trying to talk it up too much. It just feels like there's a big difference between these caliber of teams, really. I think that New York can make it uglier, which, from what I've seen, tends to be the way that the Celtics can kind of lose some of these games, having pretty ugly offensive showings. And sometimes they can kind of shoot themselves in the foot. But I think that more often than not, it is provoked by some of what the other team is doing. And I don't feel like Indiana would bother them enough offensively. And there could be a game or two where they just put up 130, and even then I would expect the Celtics defense to probably not allow that, but they're a good enough offense that that's possible. But on New York's side, like, there could be a game or two where the Celtics fail to reach 90. It feels like very different styles of play, and what the potential, I guess, worries or things that would need to be emphasized. There's definitely a lot of variance between these two teams. They just play so differently. There's almost an old school basketball and a new school basketball team.
The worry for me against New York, assuming Porzingis doesn't come back straight away, is that big man rotation. Mitch Robinson's coming off the bench for them after having surgery. Hartenstein's really talented. I like Hartenstein a lot. I also think he's a master of the dark arts. Likes to throw his hip into those screens a lot, so it stings, it catches you.
Master of the dark arts is great. I'm 1000% stealing that.
He's the what's his name? Is the Severus Snape of the center world. I think for this series, I wouldn't feel very confident about Luke Cornett being your guy off the bench. Just because Mitchell Robinson's too big and too strong, he's going to get bullied straight off the floor, right? So maybe Tillman's that guy. Maybe you start with Cornett and you bring Horford off the bench and manage Horford's minutes and match him up with Mitch. I don't know. I feel like that's giving up a lot of talent at the 5 just to match up. But who knows? Mitch Robinson's the type of big man that gives Boston problems anyway. Again, controlling the paint, controls the tempo. Sorry, controlling the boards helps control the tempo. You want to play Boston Celtics pace. You don't want to play New York Knicks pace, because that's when they can grind you down and keep you down under 90. I just think Boston are too talented. I think there's too much scoring there for the Knicks to be able to shut them down without Anunoby at 100%. That's just pretty much where I stand on it. If I'm going to do a Stephen A, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much with you. I think that it's taking care of the details, right? I guess, like you said, not playing down to the level of your opponent, almost in a way. Like New York, there were a couple of games even in that Cleveland series, I want to say game 2, where a couple instances where, like, Drew Holiday, Derek White, guys that don't typically do it, just fall asleep for a sec, and that can't happen against the Knicks, even more so than against the Cavs. Like, these guys cut amazingly. Yes, they board like crazy. And the effort level is just ridiculous. Like, you need to get to 50-50 balls because they will be on the floor diving after them.
And like I just said, DiVincenzo plus Brunson plus Hart, they have guys that can get their shot off, and they have guys that can get going from deep quite consistently. Factor in the effort level and the hustle, and it's a battle. Now, the one thing I will say is they're going to come into this having played 2 billion minutes each and be literally on the last pieces of skin on their feet. Like, they've just been running to the ground.
Do you how do you feel about that? Because I feel like there's been both sides of, Josh Hart's like, well, we're more prepared to do this. And I get that, but also your team's pretty damn beat up.
Yeah, and I feel there's a world where it makes sense. Like, you're only losing one guy out of rotation. Instead of playing 8, you're playing 7. It's not like they're just putting the starters on to start the game and no one comes out and no one goes in, right? There's 7 guys. It would have been 8 if Randall was healthy, most likely. So all Thibodeau said is, I don't trust 9 through 15 in the postseason. My 8th guy, like, one of the guys is out, so I'm going to reduce it to 7. Yeah, the minutes are high. I don't think they're egregiously high. I just think the style of basketball the Knicks play, coupled with the high minutes, mean that you guys are walking around bruised up badly. But that's the Thibodeau style. They knew that coming into this postseason. The Knicks knew that when they hired Tibbs. They knew that and there's talk of extending him. He's done great work there. So I'm not about to sit here and say his system isn't working or it's silly. I just think it's dangerous for players sometimes, right? I just think that it puts you at a higher risk of bad injuries. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's definitely different for modern times. I think that if you get players that don't mind doing it, which it seems that they have, that it definitely works. But you can see how, playing those heavy minutes and their preferred style of play being a little bit slower, that when a team like Indiana comes in that just runs their ass off, that can give them some troubles. Can you keep sprinting for 40 minutes? And the answer for most people is no. I certainly cannot, let me tell you. I think that the Celtics definitely should have a notable advantage there. I feel like I got to give some love to Peyton Pritchard here, man. I think we talked about this in the first one that you had me on here, how I was going to get a little more educated here. And he's just a dog. Like, he's hustling his ass off after every loose ball. He had a three. I'm struggling if it was game 4 or 5. But pretty late, I want to say it's the end of the third quarter that he knocked down off the bounce. And I was just like, dude, this guy is crazy. Like, I was wrong. I've been wrong, but this guy is solid.
Do you think, like, okay, so there's a certain section of the Celtics fan base that are saying Pritchard could be a starter for at least 10 teams in the NBA. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I think a high-level six-man, like a very reliable. I think he could be. Well, he is a six. Like, he's the first guard off the bench on a contending team, and he doesn't look out of place.
Yeah, I think he can be a third guard on a team. You know what I mean? And guard being the 1 and the 2. Like, I think that he's still a bench piece. I think there's some places where he could be the second guard right now, but there's a ridiculous amount of talented guards in the NBA.
I do think he makes sense as a contending team's guard off the bench. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I could see that. He's a spark plug. I still think like the playmaking isn't quite there to probably be a starter caliber in my mind, depending on what level of team we're talking about. But he's damn good off the bench. And that spark plug is super valuable, especially on a team like the Celtics where you don't need it, but when you get it, it's like, okay, if we're getting a night like this from Pritchard, then we're probably pretty set tonight.
I want to give you an old takes exposed moment. 2023-24 Peyton Pritchard or 2023-24 Cade Cunningham?
Oh, I'm going Cade very well. Okay. We're talking about for the future or for this year?
Like, if you had to choose the version of player that you've seen from both of them this season and plug it into a team that you knew needed a bench guard, but they weren't going to get better, they weren't going to get worse. It was just this version. Who are you choosing?
I'm still taking Cade. I'm a Cade believer. I love Cade. I still think Cade's going to be a multi-time all-star, perennial all-star. I think this guy can manipulate the game like on another level. Yeah. I'm still a big Cade believer, so it's an extremely high bar, but I think Pritchard has been balling. But I can't do it to Cade. I'm still a believer. I'm still a big Cade guy.
I'm not about to expose myself and say Pritchard. I think Cade is the better player, but I wanted to see how far you'd come, because before you would have shut me down instantly. Like, what you want about, dude? It's not even in the same league. Now you're like, oh, okay, so I'm going to choose Cade, but so you see, you're coming around, man. You're coming by the end of this playoffs. You'll be like, dude, who's Cade? I'm a true fan.
We'll see. We'll see how far we get. What do you think is the next step for Pritchard? What do you think of the potential ceiling, and could that even happen in Boston?
Yeah, I think so. Like, this season he added his bump creation, where he's bumping into guys to create space around the rim. That's been a development this year. That was much needed for him to become a multi-level scorer. I feel like up until this point, it's all been about what he can do on the perimeter. When he drives, it's kind of, if you can't get the ball out of your hands, you're a net negative. Now he's added that bump creation, that space creation off the bounce. He can finish around the rim. He's become a 2-level guy. He's starting to work on that dribble pull-up out of closeouts to become a pure 3-level scorer. Once he does that, the floor's going to open up for him a lot. And then it's about how can you make reads out of pick and roll when you can't see over the defense, right? And for me, that's going to be going with that Isaiah Thomas kind of creation where you beat guys off the bounce and then you stop so that you create space that way to make the read. And if they send to, you just reset the ball back out to the perimeter. So it's not about learning to be a high level playmaker. It's learning about how to manipulate people with your speed to create opportunities elsewhere on the floor. But that'll come once he adds in that mid range and the floor opens up for him because they have to respect him on every shooting level.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I see the blueprint, but there's an interesting, part of being a good team is I think sometimes guys at the end of bench maybe can't get the opportunity that maybe would allow them to expand their game.
Yeah.
But it's always great when you can strike that balance, and it seems like they've been able to develop Pritchard while also managing his minutes and still winning games in the meantime,
So what I'm going to do to end this, and I'm going to bounce because I want to eat, is give me a prediction. Who are the Celtics facing in the next round?
I think New York's winning game 6.
Do you think they're winning game 6? I think they're winning game 7, but I think we both agree that it's Celtics Knicks. If you go on my Instagram, I posted a video on there. I feel like I've upset everybody. And it was a bunch of Celtics fans saying fuck New York as they were walking out of the TD Garden. Have a look. It seems to be popping off on my IG at the moment. I found it quite funny. Everybody, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Go show Brenden some love at Brenden Nunez NBA on socials. Show me some love over on IG or Twitter, but IG because I like IG more. People are more friendly. Way more friendly. Way more friendly.
Way more
friendly. I like friendly people. And I'll catch you again tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow talking some form of basketball. Brenden will be back with me over the weekend. If he's not, he'll be back with me tomorrow. I'll be joined by Cody tomorrow, Brenden, if you want to jump in on that.
Oh, the boy.
Yeah, if you want to jump in, it'll be like 7 a.m. your time.
We will see how tonight goes, but yeah.
All right, everybody, catch you all later. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.
Later.